All right, welcome everybody to another Developer Hours. This is a probably twice a month series that we do covering the latest things that happen in the world of WordPress that are related to developers, both extenders from blocks and plugins and also in themes, which is also an extension of WordPress. So my name is Nick Diego, and I am a fully sponsored full-time contributor to WordPress, sponsored by Automatic. And I'm joined by my colleague, Justin Tadlock. Would you like to introduce yourself, Justin?
Hi, I'm Justin Tadlock. I am also a full-time contributor to WordPress, sponsored developer relations advocate with Automatic, and happy to be here and sharing cool new things happening for WordPress 6.6.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that don't know, hopefully you do, but in case you don't, WordPress 6.6 is scheduled to be released on July 16th. So a couple weeks from now. Today, the first release candidate will be released. Probably it's happening while we're in this session. The official post hasn't gone out yet, but later today, that first release candidate will come out. The release candidate you can look at as like basically every feature is done and baked into the release. What will happen now between now and the release date, where people find bugs, those will get fixed, that sort of thing. So once that comes out, I highly encourage you to test out the release. Because we don't have the release candidate out quite yet, I'm going to share the beta 3 release post. This came out last week. We put that in the chat. And this is the beta release that came out right before the release candidate. Either way, testing that as well is a great place to start once you start testing for the release that's coming up. Now, one of the things that Justin and I like to do whenever we do these presentations, we're going to be sharing a ton of links throughout this session. So we have a document that we put together that has all those links in it. I'm going to share it now in the chat so you can keep this open as we go through things. We will be sharing individual links as it pertains to what we're talking about. So for now, welcome, take a look at the document. Anybody watching this after the fact, this document will be in the show notes. So take a look there. You'll find all the resources that we link to in those notes. So there's a couple other announcements I want to go through before we actually start talking about what's new for theme developers in WordPress 6.6. And every month on the WordPress developer blog, there is a post called What's New for Developers. This is a great way, you can read it in 15 minutes. Great way to stay up to date on what's happening in WordPress. It's all the highlights that we curate and put together that will hopefully keep you updated and outline what's happening. So the latest one was in June. They come out on the 10th of every single month. So you look for the next one on July 10th. So the link is there for the June 10th, What's New for Developers. Also, as I said, this event, it happens about twice a month. Our next event is going to be on July 9th, and it's going to be about editor unification and extensibility. In WordPress 6.6, a lot of work was done to unify the post editor and the site editor, and that has some ramifications for extensibility. So we're going to be doing a session on that, covering all those different changes that you will see in 6.6 and how you can adapt your plugins for that. Finally, we encourage you to subscribe to the WordPress developer blog. This blog has been evolved over the last few years. We're finally past 1,000 subscribers. It is a place where WordPress contributors all come together to publish content that's related to developers. Yes, Justin and I have both published. Justin publishes way more content than I do, but we both publish on the blog, but we also have contributors from all over the community publishing as well. So we highly encourage you to keep an eye on the developer blog, and subscribing is the best way to do that. All right, so announcements out of the way. We're going to start diving straight into some high-level topics that are coming in WordPress 6.6 that you'll be able to use as theme developers. Justin is going to start by doing a nice little demo of some of the big ticket items. At the end, I'll do another demo of some other items, as well as some changes that are coming in 6.6 that you should be aware of. And hopefully by the end of this, coupled with the document that I share with all sorts of links, you'll have a pretty good understanding of what's coming in the next release. If you have questions, please post them in the chat. We'll be monitoring those and answering those along the way. And as always, Justin and I are available in WordPress Slack and Twitter and elsewhere after the fact if you have questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Justin, who's going to kick us off with some demos.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, if you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to, ask as I move through these different topics. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is my favorite thing, is updates to block style variations. You probably heard these called section styles, and I'm still closing things in my window, by the way. And that is one way to look at them, but I feel like just saying we have section styles is downplaying like what's so cool about these updates. There's so much more to them. Section styles as part of that, and let's start with that specific feature. So we'll look in. I have a page set up called sections. If it'll open, there we go. So when I think about section styles, I always think of these websites with different colored sections. Like you might say a big home page, and as you scroll down, the background changes and the text color changes and so on. It's pretty standard. I see that that link is not matching. So there's a thing I need to fix. But yeah, so that's essentially the idea of section styles. How can we make these big sections and not only just change the background and text color, but what happens if we want to change like the button color for a section? And we can absolutely do that. Or if we want to change the color of a pull quote. And if we look over on the front end, this looks pretty much the same. All right, so I need to move this thing on my screen here. If we go over into my example theme, which I do have this up on GitHub, it's linked in the document as that Nick shared earlier. What I've done is I've created 3 different sections called section 1, section 2, section 3. Feel free to name those more appropriately for your project. So these are individual JSON files. If you've built themes before, block themes, you probably know that you can put a styles folder, and you can have global style variations. Well, now you can also have block style variations that are registered as well. As a side note to that, you will see that I've also organized these in subfolders for my own sanity. I encourage you to do the same. Otherwise, it can get really messy. All right, so this is what we're looking at here is the section 1 JSON. There are a few things for WordPress to recognize these as quote unquote section styles. You need to have a few things. In particular, these 3 items: your title. The slug is optional, but the title will be used to generate the slug if it's missing. And you need an array of 1 or more block types. I've just set this to group. You can add it to columns, cover, media and text, or whatever other blocks you want to add it to. And like you can otherwise do in like a theme JSON type file. You want to add a styles property, and you can add color, spacing. As you can see here, it's pretty limited. I just have color, spacing, and a little typography change or color change to the headings. This is relatively simple. but you can get far more complex, and I'll show an example in a second. But the goal is like these are like mini theme JSON files where you can completely style sections of content, and you can easily update them on a client side, or if your theme's publicly distributed, you can update them and have those changes reflected across your users' sites. And the great thing is, you know, you don't have to build all of this in the editor. Like if you're building a client site, you don't have to come in and design these individual sections and then come in and change the, you know, colors. You can just have one, you know, definition. And okay, so but let's look at more practical examples.
Justin, real quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
can you just quickly show how you change the section style, like in the UI, in the
Oh yeah, I knew I'd forget something important. So they are just like any other block style. You can, you know, switch up your sections really quickly and switch back to the default. As you can see, like default, there's nothing applied. And then you can see the spacing and the colors, and both changing as I switch to section one. I will switch over. I'm gonna switch over to my theme. So I actually have quite a few, you know, section styles here. These are what I call more practical use cases. I have like a archive header. So we look at my theme. I actually want to. I need to clear something out. Let's see, composer there. Sorry about that. All right, get back to my regular theme design. All right, so if we look at, you know, this is what I call my archive header, like this whole section here. And if I wanted to, this is a really simple one. It's just got spacing. Like I want this spacing applied whenever I'm on a archive page in this like header area. Really simple thing, but where it becomes in handy is if I want to switch style variations. So I have a composer script for switching style variations quickly. So I can switch these, and the this is actually changed between different global or theme style variations. So those, like your block style variations, can mix with your global style variations, if that makes sense. So we know we can register this, like say this archive header section in its own JSON file.
oh,
But if we want to yeah, go ahead.
quickly while we're
Um,
here, the title and slug can be different, right? The slug is the one that's actually defining the style variation. The title can be whatever you want, correct?
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
All right. So here I'm looking at this. I've changed the style variation here, the global style. I have to remember to say global style variation now, or theme style variation, to differentiate them. So if I want to override this, I can do it directly in the, you know, this global style variation file. And there's a new key. I know it's showing squiggly lines right now in VS Code. Probably have my schema version wrong. But we can overwrite these variations. So this is you just need the slug, you know, archive header, and you see I set the top and bottom borders, changed the color, and I mixed up the spacing a bit. So these are overwritable. You can also register these via PHP. I don't have a live example of PHP at the moment, but if we can link to the post that was published last week on the developer blog, there's an example of how to do that. Trying to think, yeah, there are other practical examples. So let me switch variations again. Um, so, this is my favorite little thing. If I can, is like I just want to change. So here, and we'll look at the admin side of this too. This is actually a small section or a block style variation called the post byline. And you can see here, I just changed something as simple as the post author name, like the font, the typography is different than the rest of the posts byline. And we can do this by opening this up. And so you can see I have a nested blocks and for the post byline variation. And you can style blocks and you can style nested elements within those blocks. And it can get really deep. You can have a lot of levels to this. You can also style top level elements under the post byline, which I think I did. No, I didn't for this one, but I did style color. But as you can see in, let me click my, all right, so post byline is just another block style variation. And I have variations for a little bit of everything. I have a card, layout. I have one for site footer. I have one for, I also have one for site header that somehow for some reason isn't registered here. But we can look at, yeah. So I also do things like these card layouts. They, are also these section styles, these block style variations. And I can style like these, individual cards from their own JSON files. And, again, you can just kind of dive into, you could do anything you normally would do for, theme JSON styles. I think that mostly covers like the bigger overall picture of block style variations. What kind of questions we got coming in?
Lisa's asked a question, can the page editor override section style variation presets that you're sharing? And I'm clarifying, I think she means like at the block level. So yes, you can override anything at the individual block level if you want.
Yeah, so we can do that really quick. Like test it live. See, I just changed the background color, not the best. But we can clear in, yeah, you can change it, in the editor itself. Yeah, I prefer to not do that as much as possible because I want to use the block style variations to keep an updatable and manageable design over time. In situations where we're working with clients, especially, and we may change their design 6 months from now or a year from now, and we don't want to have to go through and update the content itself. Personally, I like to lock down. Depending on the situation, I like to lock down and not even show, like, say, for example, the text color and background color options or even typography. I want to do them mostly through these, block styles. And with these new capabilities, where you can design customized nested elements and nested blocks for, individual sections, I feel like that opens up that possibility more. You can lock down the UI better while having a robust design system all through like JSON. Hopefully that helps explain my thought process a little.
Yeah, I just want to dovetail on that where the section styles, like imagine a scenario where you use some of the other curation tools that are available to like disable all the color and typography options, like, and you're just powering things by section styles. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could use this, and that might just be one of them in terms of, managing content. So a lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah, there's so much we're not gonna have time to explore today either. And with what you can do with these block style variations, highly encourage, like when you get off this call today, go play with WordPress 6.6, the beta or the release candidate if it's out, um, and just see what you can do. And we will, Nick will talk about it a little later, but with block style variations, there were some major changes to the underlying like global style system and how CSS is output. Uh, Not to be the guy that says the sky is falling or anything like that, um, but there's potential for some backwards compatibility, some CSS breakage. Um, and my findings have been mostly pretty minimal, but it's something you should be testing before 6.6 is out. Do we want to go ahead and jump into color and typography variations, or we have any
Yeah.
other lingering questions? So,
Well, Lisa's asking a question. Does this concept reduce the need for patterns? I have my opinion. What do you think, Justin?
no, I think you still need I kind of think of the patterns more as the layout, the content, and not necessarily the design. I would lean more into the design parts, like colors, typography, border, those sorts of things at the section or the block style variation level. And then, but we use these block style variations within our patterns. Um, so I should have switched themes. Let me switch back. Let's just go back really quickly and we can look at, so like this is a pattern here, this whole thing with these like cards. And it specifically uses, has a section style. I think it's like section 3 for my theme, which it just has a white background. But this could be, different colors. And then nested inside of that overall section or other sections, like these cards or sections themselves. So that's the pattern is kind of the layout and putting these things together. And there are other things like that you can do with patterns, and then I think more the style stuff is just for, styles. You're not affecting what's actually output, the content or the layout. Hopefully that helped kind of explain a little bit. All right, so the next big feature we have, and there's been some confusion around what's block style variations, what's color style variations, and typography variations. They can be, they're all new things, and they all work on the JSON system. And so color and typography variations are what we're going to talk about now. And they're actually, I think, often called presets, and in some areas of the UI. So if you go to your site editor, this is a child theme of 2024. I've added a couple of color palette variations and typography variations. It's similar to the block style variations. We can register these via the styles folder. And I've also separated them into color and typography subfolders. So the thing here is to make these are global settings. So for example, you have your normal, default, and there's Ember. You can change your global style variation, but then you can also create these other variations to just change the color, or you can just change the typography. So when you register these, when you add these JSON files, you do need, let's look at the color file. I wonder if Slug's, I haven't looked, maybe Slug is also supported here, but I don't know. This is a color style variation called Emerald. And so I took 2024's color palette slugs and I just overwrote them, for this theme. And that's all I've done. You can also change, you can also change, you can come down and add, say, styles, and you can go in and add specific styles for this color variation, but they must be color related. If there's anything that's not color related in this JSON file, it will become a global style variation. That's how they are, WordPress is able to tell them apart. And it's the same situation with typography. If we look at this, we set some font families, and always kind of close that up. But we can also specifically target, blocks and elements within the typography variation. But if we done something like, say with the quote block here, if we came in here and added, color, all of a sudden this is no longer a typography variation. It becomes, WordPress recognizes it as a global style variation at that point. So essentially this feature is a way to offer, users an opportunity to mix and match things a bit more, but also in a bit of a curated way, because you're the one who's creating these different variations. Of course, if you don't want to include them, you don't have to. And there are some limitations. I think there are limitations in terms of this feature is just brand new, and we have things to explore in the future. And I think like I would love to see, like, for example, some jumping around, like the Ember variation. See, everything's defined there at the top. Like I have to define the typography and the colors and everything for that global style variation. Ideally, I could create a color palette and say, okay, Ember said the Ember style variation says I want to use this color palette, and then I want to use this specific typography, variation, and be able to pull those in. That's not possible now. I think that would be cool. So there's less work to do. I do feel like this is less useful for, I don't know how useful it is for in client situations, unless you, there's probably situations where it is. I feel like this is kind of that nod to people who are building publicly distributable themes or products where you want to offer a bunch of options for your users to tinker around with their website and make it their own. What do we have in the chat, Nick?
I think we're looking pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to spend too much time on color and typography variations because I think they're cool. I think they're fun to play with. Just, but they're not useful for every use case. All right, let's look at custom aspect ratios. And I need to switch back themes again. I have themes across different themes today. This is kind of a minor thing, but it's also one of my absolutely most wanted, features in WordPress. All right, let's just create a new page. I realized I didn't have an example ready for this. All right, say image, and we'll just pull something from the media library. Okay, so in the past, there were very specific aspect ratios that WordPress created. And you can see most of them in the dropdown. Square, standard, classic, wide. And I've added some custom ones here. like this extra wide, so 2x1. And yeah, it's just kind of a neat feature. You can you'll be able to register aspect ratios. If you haven't used aspect ratios, you can also use these with so we can switch this to cover, and they work with cover block, post featured image, and they also work with the image block. So let me see. The one thing that's limiting with the image block is the aspect ratio disappears if you do wide or full alignment. So that's a known issue, and there's a ticket for that. And there was one other issue Nick and I ran into this morning, is we realized if you put this in a grid layout, you also the aspect ratio control also disappears. So let's look at how you register these. And they're going to work similar to other presets. They under and theme JSON. They're under the dimensions property. So there are 3 new things you can set. So aspect ratio just allows users to set an aspect ratio. It should be true by default. And you can also choose to use the core default aspect ratios, or you can turn them off. I actually have them turned off and re-registered. So let's just look at an example. It's pretty straightforward. You add a name, which should be, will be translated. You add a slug, and you add your actual ratio, which is the CSS property aspect ratio. So let's look. I do encourage using the squares a little out as an outlier. So I do encourage using slugs with this kind of number format. That's how WordPress does it. If you're interested in just kind of following the convention of WordPress, yeah, just use the numbers to do your slugs, and they'll probably be more forward compatible across different themes, if that's something that you're thinking about. Any questions on aspect ratios?
Nope. People seem
yeah.
it's a cool addition.
All right. If there are nothing else, Nick, we can kick it back over to you to start covering some of the other stuff.
With one quick question about aspect ratios, is this version 3 only? I assume they're referring to theme.json version 3.
Yeah, okay. Well, WordPress is going to upgrade. Yeah, you should upgrade to version 3 of your theme JSON for WordPress 6.6. I think WordPress does have a compatibility layer, like it migrates. Like if you're still on version 2, like the theme is saying, "I'm okay, this is version 1 or 2," then it's got a migration path like under the hood where things work. I really don't know if it support. That's a good question there. If you know, Nick, I have no idea. I have no idea if like we set this to version 2, would it actually work? You want to give it a try?
Yeah, let's give it a try. So it's
All right.
I posted the dev note for version 3, and the main reason the reason why it was updated had to do with font sizes and spacing sizes. So that is working, right, Justin?
Yeah, it's working correctly.
So
yeah, we do have someone that is supposed to write a post that's going to dive into a more detailed overview of like how theme JSON works. Because I think there's a wide knowledge gap there between some of the people who are like contributing to core and like extenders like ourselves.
Mhm.
I'm going to push to get that developer blog article, written by the person who's assigned to it. So hopefully we'll have that up sometime in the near future.
I think the TLDR on version 3 is that you will eventually want to upgrade to version 3. As you know, as things progress, you want to upgrade as we move forward. Right now, don't worry too much about it. Take a look at the dev note that we posted there. Brian is posting some good comments in the chat about version 3. Version 3 really only impacts font sizes and spacing sizes, and there's an important change that was happening around that to make things work well. Everything else you're seeing, like the aspect ratio, will work in version 2, but take a peek at that dev note around version 3, and you might be able to upgrade to version 3 without any issues. But there is a potential breaking change there around how you have specified font sizes or spacing sizes. So take a peek at that. Again, you don't need to do this today. You don't need to do this as soon as 6.6 comes out, but it is something that you should be aware of and start thinking about, especially as you're building a new theme. If you're building a brand new theme, start with version 3 and go from there. All right,
Absolutely.
we only have 20 minutes left, so I'm gonna dive straight in. Let me share my screen and we'll talk about a few more fun, hopefully, things. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen. We just have a standard 2024 theme. We don't have a fun theme like Justin. So what I want to talk about right now is grid layout. So grid has been in WordPress since 6.3, but it's been kind of buried. But it was something that you could use. Now in 6.6, there will be a grid variation for the group block. And grid is something that a lot of people have asked for. It's been a pretty common feature request. And the version in 6.6 is a fantastic iteration. Do know that there are some limitations around grid that will be continually improved as we move forward. But here's just a quick little demo of how grid will work in 6.6. So we have this grid variation for the group block. So you can insert it as you would a normal block. We can go grid, can insert it there. You can also insert a group and then select from grid here. Similar to stacks and rows. Once you have inserted your grid, and here I just dumped in a bunch, you can look at the list view, we have our images. They have these little handy toggles that will allow you to expand the rows and columns that this block takes up within the grid. Before I show you that, there's kind of two modes when it comes to grid. We have auto and manual. So auto is going to take the content and just present it in the best way it thinks it wants to. It's going to give you this minimum column width. You can adjust that. You can see how it adjusts like this. The great thing about the auto mode is that it's responsive out of the box. So if we change this to tablet and mobile, you can see that it, adjusts based on the width of the browser. Manual mode gives you a lot of granular control over the number of columns that are, the grid is displayed in. However, as of version 6.6, it won't be out of the box responsive because you're in manual mode, it doesn't know how you want to handle things on mobile. So if you want to use manual mode, you will need some custom CSS to modify things as you would want on mobile. So just know that that is an existing limitation in 6.6. Back to auto though. Let's go back to desktop. So I mentioned that you can use these little toggles to adjust the column span and the row span for each item within the grid. You can also manually change that here under dimensions. You can see right here. So, but let me just use the drag handles. It's a little bit more dramatic. So I'm going to expand this to be two columns wide. And you'll see that this kind of blows everything out. But if you're familiar with how grid works under the hood, this is how you would expect it to work because this image is spanning 2 columns in 1 row. But I want to make this look a little bit better. So instead of spanning 2 columns in 1 row, how about we span 2 columns in 2 rows? We drag down like this, and there we go. So, so now we have this image that's spanning 2 of our columns and 2 of our rows, and we get this fun little grid layout. Look at it on the front end, and there we go. So I highly encourage you to start experimenting with grid and how you can use it in layouts. Again, know that this is very much a first iteration of the kind of the UI and how this works in as a grid variation of the group block. And we'll see definitely many more improvements in the future. Does anybody have any questions about grid?
There was one that came up. Well, now there's 2. There's one that came up previously when you wanted to do grid. You had to register the variation yourself. You'll no longer have to do that for WordPress 6.6. Will there be a responsive manual workflow for grid in the near future? That's always the question, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think that grid makes that super obvious, right? You know, it's unlikely that if you had this in manual mode, that this is the way you'd want it to look on mobile. You know, I think that's pretty obvious. And so there is not a solution currently, but it is something that is on the top of people's minds. And it's something obviously Justin and I would love to see, because I feel like that would make it feel much more complete as a solution. You know, as a simple, this is me just thinking out loud. But one of the things we might be able to see is like a wrap on mobile. So if we do our, you know, our columns block here, we have, where are we? We have the stack on mobile type option. So you can see something like that as like a next iteration, just a simple stack on mobile, that type of thing. But I would love to see some more beyond that. Anything else?
Yeah, I'll link a ticket in the chat for everyone. Like if you want to follow the progress on grid layout support, there's quite a bit left to do. So
Yeah, for sure. All right. Next, we're going to be talking about the most complicated thing. So hopefully I can explain this without confusing myself or you. And we're going to give it a try. So in 6.6, there have been some style specificity changes. I don't know if Justin, if you can link the dev note on it. The dev note's great, and you got to kind of sit down, think about, and digest what it's trying to explain, because it is kind of a meaty topic. And when we start talking about CSS styles and how they kind of stack on top of each other, you know, you got base block styles, and you got theme.json, and you got, you know, user edited block style. Like there's a lot of different ways to style blocks, and how they kind of interact with each other is complicated. So the reason why the specificity changes are happening in 6.6 largely came about due to the section styling that Justin shared earlier, because you have, not only do you have the styles from theme.json, then you're styling individual sections, and you need to make sure those section styles take precedent over anything in theme.json. So there's a lot of different layers there, and the specificity changes help facilitate that. But on top of that, they also make styling blocks much easier, because the main thing with these specificity changes is it took all the CSS that's generated from theme.json and block styles, and it reduced the specificity. So this is new to me as I was learning about this, but it reduced it to a specificity of 010, which, and it is going to look complicated the way it was implemented. And we're just going to start looking at the console here, or whatever. This looks very complicated. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. Can I zoom in on this? Okay, perfect. All right, so see how this says root where, and then we have this block, you know, this style being wrapped in root where, and if I hover over this, you can see that it says specificity 010. This root where seems convoluted and complex, but that is what takes the style and reduces that specificity. So if you were trying to target block image dot is style rounded image, it's a lot easier because any style that you register using that CSS will take precedent over what is defined in theme.json. So let me back up for a second and let me walk through an example of how this works. And we're going to use the example of this block style called is style rounded. So if I go to edit this page, this block, image block, has the style rounded. This is a built-in block style that's provided by WordPress. And there are some CSS that comes with that. By default, where are we? By default, WordPress provides a border radius of 9,999. Then you're going to see this other border radius here, who is W preset spacing 20. Where the heck is this coming from, and what are all these numbers? This is coming from global styles. Now, what we're doing is we're looking at 6.6 here. I'm going to go back and we're going to look at 6.5 in a second, which is the current version, to see how this has changed. But this is global styles. So if we come over here and we take a look at the theme 2024 and we go to theme.json, of course, that's not going to come up. If we come down here and we look for, okay, we want the image block. Apologies for all the scrolling. Okay, perfect. Right here, you can see that we have our core image, and we're defining the variation, a custom style for this variation. Variation is the border, the rounded style block style variation. And you can see here we have the border radius, WP preset spacing 20. That is exactly what we're seeing here, this WP preset spacing 20. So you can see that there's the base WordPress styles that are providing the 9,999. Then the theme is providing its own style variation. Sorry, own styles for the block style variation using this spacing 20. That's taking precedent over the base. Then back over here, not here, here, I have defined manually a border radius of 50. So looking at this again, we can see that this border radius 50 is beating everything else. So everything else below it, it beats, because block styles, so if we look down here in my little grid, user modified block styles always win because they're applied in line on the element. If we look at 6.5, the way this works is we have user modified block styles. That's just me coming into the editor and making changes. Then we have custom styles. This might be some custom style sheet that you register. Your either base theme style sheet, if you're using that, or anything, any custom styles that maybe are registered by a block or whatever, or plugin or whatever. Then we have global styles on theme.json. Then we have block style variations, and then we have core block styles. So let's just come back and just think about this for a second. This is what we have here. It's very similar. So this is a base styles, but it's also the block style variation of is style rounded that's provided by core. That is this green bar here. Sorry, it's green and this tan bar. Then we have global styles, which is this, because it's registered in theme.json, which is this bar here. We have not defined any custom styles yet. And then we have our user modified styles that are winning, and that's where we're getting that 50 pixels border radius. As we move to 6.6, we, as I mentioned, we now have the reduced specificity here, where this is down 010. And what that is going to do is it's going to require you to make a change if you're registering your own block styles. So if you have a block style variation that is targeting something, actually, before let me go back to 6.5, and hopefully that will make things a little bit more clear. And then we can look at how the cascade happens, and then we'll make the change. So I'm going to come over here. We'll go to. I understand this is complicated, so hopefully you're all sticking with me here. So we're going to go back to 6.5. Now we're in 6.5. Back here. So now if we look at this, the styles here, we don't see any more of that root where. What we see is we see that the 9,999, we have the block style variation that's being registered in theme.json here. And then we have our user modified border radius of 50 pixels here. So the same order is being maintained. However, let's come over to this little utility plugin I have. And this is going to basically update the rounded style variation. And we're going to just go like this. We're going to do block style, is style rounded image. We're going to give it 10 EM. I'm just going to save this. When I refresh now, we look at the image, we can see that we have our base styles. We have the block style variation that I've defined. We have theme.json, and then we have user modified. So that's what we have here. Base, block style, global styles, user modified. That's the order that we have. Let's update now to 6.6. So if you had a setup like that, everything's working the way it should, that's how it works in 6.5. Now we're going to refresh, and you will see that our block style is now beating anything that was defined here. So this is the global style. So global styles should be beating our custom block style variation, but it is not. Now we have block style variations above it. And the reason for that is because the specificity on this and the way that the styles are loaded put it above our global styles. Now you might be wondering, why do I care? This is the style that I want it to be. And the reason that this matters, and this is something that you should care about, is because block style variations are configurable in global styles. So I'm going to make this, hopefully make this clear. So we're going to take over here, we're going to remove the user modified settings. When I remove the user modified settings, you will see that the 10 EM, which I registered manually in my style, in my block style here, 10 EM, is taking precedent. It shouldn't, because we have our global styles that it should be overriding that. If I come over here, and this is why you should care about this, if you go to the editor, and I didn't, honestly, this is not something that I always do, but it is a feature of WordPress, and it's only going to become more powerful as we move forward. If I go to image, I can see the style variations that have been registered. I can come in here and modify that style variation, and that style variation will be amended to global style, and just like if we defined it in our theme.json file. So a user could come in here and say, hey, cool, my site has a rounded style variation. I want to make a change to that. Instead of whatever border radius it has, I want to modify that. So let's just say that I want to have a modified to 10 or 20 or whatever. Notice that this is not changing. Notice that this is not changing. The reason is because my styles, because they're sitting above global styles, which have now been reduced in specificity, this no longer works. So this functionality in the site editor for users to be able to modify style variations no longer works. So the way to solve this, let me just come in here. Let's make sure we're setting this to something that we care about. Let's do 20. We'll save. The solution here, and the dev note will explain this probably better than I'm doing right now, The solution is to, whenever you're registering a style variation or you have some custom CSS that is modifying something that is modifiable in global styles, like in the UI, user can maybe change the border color or the padding or the margin, anything that's supported in theme.json. If you want to ensure that those modifications are still enabled within the site editor, you need to make sure you're reducing that specificity. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same style. We're going to wrap it in root and where. I have this other style here, which we're going to just disable real quick because it's messing us up. Now, when I come up here and I refresh, now you can see that my border radius of 20 pixels, which I set in global styles, is now taking precedent over the registered block style variation. And this is kind of how things are supposed to work. Hopefully that made sense. We're at 2 minutes until the end of the session, but I really wanted to kind of hammer this home. And there's another reason why this is important. And the reason this is important is it actually makes it much easier to actually write custom CSS that overrides what WordPress is providing with global styles. Let me give you a quick example of this. Before, if I wanted to style a image block that is style rounded, I would have had to do something like this, WP block image. And I would have had to use this to override what WordPress is providing, because WordPress was providing the same style at the same specificity. And so I would need to make sure I targeted exactly that block to make sure whenever I had a style rounded, it was border radius 1 EM. The problem lies is, like, what if you had the same style variation or the same custom CSS applied to multiple different block types? Then you'd have to go in and you specify every single block type that you want to target. Now, though, because we've reduced specificity on things that are in global styles, you can do something like this, where you just have is style rounded image 1 EM, and any block that has an image in it that is style rounded, so you could register multiple style variations for multiple different blocks, or the same style variation for multiple different blocks. Now, when I refresh, you can see that unfortunately 1 EM looks very similar to 20 pixels, but 1 EM is now taking precedent over the global styles. So not only does this specificity change impact how you have to manage global styles and making sure you're managing specificity appropriately, it actually makes it much easier to write custom CSS that overrides styles provided by WordPress. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, check out the dev note, and there's some more information there. And we are at time, but I think there's a couple more things that we want to cover that we feel pretty important to know about. I apologize for going over time. If you have to drop, we understand there will be a recording of this, but I'm just going to keep going to try to cover the things that are on my list, and hope you'll stay with us. All right, so the next thing I wanted to cover really quickly is lists. Seems very minor, but this is something that if you're a theme developer, you probably run into before, and that is styling lists with custom CSS. So before, if you think about lists, they're everywhere. You know, if you look at our navigation menu right here, this is a list, right? It has a custom class. This is a list. But unfortunately, the list in WordPress previously did not have a class. It was just a UL or OL element. And in order to target it, you often had to just add a custom class to it, right? Not anymore. And this is it's such a small little change, but it probably will hopefully save you some custom CSS somewhere. There's now a class called WP block list, as with every other block. And now it's super easy to target lists. So here I just had a fun little change here. We just do list block and we just target the element. And now we refresh, and now we have some fun, what do you call them? List types, list style types. So hopefully that will make things a lot easier for you when you're trying to target list elements within content in your theme. The last thing, this is the reason why I want to go over a little bit, is root padding, because this is something that is a very good change, but it does have the potential to break things. And I say that not trying to scare you, just is we've actually run into it on WordPress.org as we were making changes. So let me just show you how this works. I'm in 6.6 right now, so we're seeing the result of these changes. Let me go back and I'm going to switch back to version 6.5. And then we'll look at how this works. So keep this in your mind. Basically, what we have is we have a group that is inside of that group, that this light purple group is full width. Inside of that group, we have a content width group, a wide width group, and another full width group. If we do this, if we look on mobile, or let's bring this out a little bit, you can see that there's some padding on the edge here. So this is our root padding that's being provided by the theme. And you can see that the content and wide width groups have the padding, whereas the full width actually go full width. This is kind of how you'd expect. Full width should go full width. Now, the reason why the full width inside of these groups do not go full width is it's going full width of the container that it's in. So that is kind of what you'd expect, because you want it to span the full width of the container. But here we have it spanning the full width. Let's refresh and look at what this looks like with currently in 6.5. Now you'll see in 6.5, we have all these extra spaces. And this is because the full width containers aren't actually going full width. They're getting prevented from going full width by the padding that is being applied in the group. So there's a lot of layouts that you might have where the way you designed it, because you had to design it with this current implementation, things actually work for you. Because you had to deal with this paradigm of these extra padding being applied in 6.5. So you built your layout to support this, I guess you call it, limitation of the layout structure. So know that when you update to 6.6, this has been quote unquote fixed, and now full width containers actually go full width. So you may have layouts that you weren't expecting to go full width because before they were constrained, and now they do. So really test your templates, test your patterns to make sure that this change is not negatively impacting the designs that you had intended. But I personally feel like this is a very necessary change, because when something is full width, especially if you have a full width inside of a full width container, you'd expect it to go full width. So the TLDR on this is that if you have a full width container and then another full width container and then another full width container, all of them go full width. If you have a full width container, a wide container, and a full width container, the full width container goes to the edge of the wide container. So if you have nested full width containers, they all go full width. The full width stops as soon as it's in a container that is not itself full width. Hopefully that makes sense. This is the one thing that we already have seen causing some, not causing issues, forcing us to make some updates to themes that have already been built in order to accommodate this change. But I think in the long term, as we move forward years and years, this is the correct direction to go. Sorry for going over.
Yeah, if I can say, Nick, with the root padding, where I've run into the most issues has been where I have previously fixed pre-existing issues, and then now with this kind of cleanup in core, it's causing me to have to go back and change, reset my earlier fixes. So that's been the frustrating part of it a little bit. So
exactly, and that's the same thing that happened on WordPress.org, where fixes were implemented to patch issues in core, and then now those are getting fixed, and now you got to back out your. So there's definitely some of that. So be aware of that as you upgrade to 6.6 and test. Any other questions that we have remaining?
I think everyone's just been listening to you, or they've been very confused.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's very confused about the specificity issues. But I was confused myself, and that was my best attempt to make it clear. And I know it was not as clear as it could be. So
yeah, we just had one come up that's unrelated. Yeah, Larry, if you just pop over in the outreach channel on WordPress Slack with questions. That would be great. I'll link to it in the chat. If you're not a member already, we'd love to have you.
Absolutely. All right. Do we have any option in theme to override root padding? Oh yeah. So root padding is something that you can define in theme.json. So that is something that in the
Yeah. And we should have documentation on that too. And I'll link to that the docs.
I'm just going to quickly show here. So in theme file
Okay.
editor, if we go to theme.json and we scroll to the bottom here, I think. Yeah, so under styles, there's the spacing option, and this is where you define block gap and padding left and right, and this is going to define that root padding. If you want to do it in the UI, underneath styles, and you go to layout, you'll see the same thing. So we have the content wide, we have our padding, and then we have the root padding here that's being applied for that. So all definable inside of the UI, and the changes that have been recently implemented just make it a little bit more, work a little bit more as expected. So. All right, well, we're about 10 minutes over, so thank you for everybody for hanging in there. We are available in WordPress, Slack, and on Twitter, and wherever else we are. But if you have any more questions, and please reach out to us. If you are experimenting with 6.6 and you want to show us your work, we'd love to see that as well. So this release has a lot of interesting things coming, especially for theme developers. I think the style variations, both for the block style variations and then the typography and color only style variations are great new tools, and it's just really about how do you want to use them and how do they fit into your own workflows. So so yeah, we're going to leave it there today for theme stuff. I really hope you join us next time for the session on editor unification and extensibility. That will be much more geared towards plugin developers and folks extending the editor, but hopefully still interesting content for anybody interested in themes as well. Anything else you want to share?
Is that one already, the time already posted on the next one?
Yep, I'll share the link for that.
Yeah.
That's going to be the same time as this on a Tuesday. We kind of keep these sessions same time Tuesday to kind of keep them regular. Yeah. And the link is in the chat there. It's on the 9th, sorry, July 9th. July 9th. All right. Anything else you want to share, Justin?
No, we're good. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Yep, thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day.